What's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. This is Living in Alberta. Today, guys, we are going to look at one of the more popular places to live in the province. Let's take a look at some of the pros and some of the cons of living in Calgary, Alberta. What's up, guys? My name is Dillman. If it's your first time on the channel, guys, you want to see more videos like this one on what it's like to live or move to Alberta, hit the subscribe button and click that notification bell so you're notified whenever I put out a new video. And guys, as much as I do love making these videos, I am a licensed realtor in the province. So if you need any help with your real estate needs, use this information showing up on the screen right now. If you'd like to take me up on that offer, reach out to me any way you like. All right, with that being said, let's get into pros and cons living in Calgary, Alberta. Let's do it. All right, guys, let's take a look at some of the bad news first. Let's take a look at one of the first cons. And in my opinion, this is kind of two cons rolled into one. But because Calgary is such a spread out city, takes up 848 square kilometers, in my opinion, kind of makes Calgary a little bit of a car dependent city. To add to that, Calgary has experienced some massive growth over the last 20-30 years. So the city hasn't really been able to keep up with some infrastructure when it comes to the transit system. So I feel like because of this, the transit system is kind of lacking for a city that is the size of Calgary. Now there's two parts to the transit system. There's obviously the buses and there's the C-train. Now in my opinion, the C-train is actually pretty good, especially since they've added a fourth car to a lot of the trains. A lot of them only used to be 3 cars, so they have much greater capacity now. But it's pretty easy to get in from, say, like the suburbs to downtown or other major destinations like McMahon Stadium, the Saddle Dome, or Chinook Mall. Where you hear a lot of people complain about the transit system is that, say for example, you are at Chinook Mall, now need to go a few blocks away. It's kind of at a walking distance. So now you're hopping on 1, maybe 2 different buses, and it's taking you as long or longer to get those few blocks as it took you to come in all the way from the suburbs. Now, as of right now, the C-train has 2 different lines. There's the red line and there's the blue line. They cover their certain sections of the city. The city has approved development of a 3rd line to be added. It's going to be called the green line, which will cover the southeastern and north central sections of the city. Now, can you live in Calgary without a car? Absolutely you can. Tons of people do it. My suggestion would be to live inner city if you can. It's much easier access to the C-train. Most things are within walking distance. Most of the people work in the downtown city center, so that's also within walking distance or close enough. Or at the very minimum, I would suggest living in a neighborhood that has a train station. So improvements are on the way, guys. It's not a terrible transit system. It's decent. I just feel like for a city that is the caliber of Calgary, I feel like it could definitely be better. Okay, guys, next con on the list, and in my opinion, I feel like Calgary's nightlife scene is definitely a little bit lacking. I recently had somebody reach out to me from Singapore. They asked me what the nightlife like is here. Is it comparable to Singapore or bigger cities like Vancouver or Toronto? And I had to be honest with him. I told him I think he might be disappointed. Now, a lot of the times in these bigger centers like Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver, there's just so much to do for all different age ranges. In my opinion, I think the nightlife in Calgary kind of caters to the younger crowd. I feel like there's not a lot to do for, people who are a little bit older, maybe late 20s and their 30s, maybe even if you're in your 40s and 50s. And I kind of feel like the nightlife scene is trending to more of like a pub, lounge, kind of brewery type scene nowadays. 15-20 years ago, the nightlife scene in Calgary and kind of all over was just a lot better. I'm not sure why this is happening. Maybe it's this newer crowd or this younger generation coming up. I did have a friend speculate that You know, maybe it's because of these invention of these apps like Tinder. I mean, who needs to go to the bar anymore when all you have to do is either swipe right or swipe left? But again, it's not bad. I just feel like there could definitely be a few more options, especially if you are a little bit older. All right, moving along, next con on the list. And a lot of the times you're going to hear Calgary called Little Texas or directly compared to Texas or Houston. And one, that's because of the parallel with the cowboy culture here.
Cowboy.
And two, that's because Calgary and Alberta as a province are heavily reliant on the oil and gas industry. Now, when the oil prices are up and the oil economy is good here, things are awesome. I think it's one of the best provinces to live in the country. 2014, for example, oil prices were high. Alberta experienced the most growth out of any province in the country. And then 2015 rolls around and the oil prices plummet, and you really saw that unemployment rate shoot up. And you found a lot of vacancies in downtown Calgary. Now, downtown Calgary is the second largest concentration of head offices, and a lot of those were oil company corporations. So, like I said, you really saw a lot of these corporations leaving and a lot of vacancies in the downtown core. And then in 2020, the pandemic hit, guys, and that was a really rough year in Alberta, but things are looking up. The oil prices right now are quite a bit higher than they've been in the last few years. I think we're up around $70-something a barrel. So that's a really good sign. But just understand that Alberta and Calgary are very prone to cycles in the oil and gas economy. And in my opinion, I feel like we could have a little bit more of a diverse economy. All right, guys, let's take a look at the next con, and that is the traffic in Calgary.
Traffic.
Now, this is highly subjective. Obviously, depending on where you're coming from, if you're coming from a smaller center like Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, or Red Deer, or even a rural setting, you're going to 100% agree with me. If you're coming from somewhere like Chicago or Vancouver, you're going to laugh at me when I say that the traffic is bad here. Now, there's two major rush hours you have to plan for in Calgary. There's the before work rush hour and the after work rush hour. Now, a lot of the city work in the downtown core, so the city center is definitely going to be more congested during these hours. But another road that drives me crazy, guys, is the Deerfoot. I don't know what it is about the Deerfoot, but I've been stuck in traffic on that road so many different times. You'll be crawling along, you think there has to be something going on up there, whether it's an accident or maybe there's construction or they have one of the lanes closed down. When you get up there, you find out that there is absolutely nothing going on. It really just comes down to there being too much congestion and maybe people not really knowing how to drive so good. Now, the city did add the Stony Trail Ring Road, which has helped congestion quite a bit, but I really struggle with the traffic in Calgary. Maybe it's because I'm not a very patient person. So depending on where you come from, you may or may not agree with me on this. All right, guys, we're almost through with the bad news now. We have one more left. Let's take a look at the last con. And you cannot talk about living in Alberta or living in Calgary without talking about winter. Now, there's no way to sugarcoat it, guys. Winters here, they suck. They're brutal. They're long. They usually start end of October, beginning of November. Usually go till about April. With that being said, it's like November 3rd or 4th today. I don't even know. And it's actually in the pluses outside, so that's awesome. But usually, like I said, 5 to 6 months of wintertime, temperatures ranging from -5 to -25. Every year, guys, you're going to see a cold snap. It comes without fail, usually in January or February, where temperatures are -30, -35 degrees Celsius, and you're seeing temperatures up to -40, -45 degrees Celsius with the wind chill. And in winter, guys, you have reduced sunlight hours, so you could be going to work in the morning in the dark, and after work, you could be going home in the dark. Another thing that really sucks about these winter conditions, guys, is they make for some really shitty driving conditions. There's times after a big snowfall, especially if you're out on the highway, it's not as bad within the cities. But if you have plans to go somewhere and it's been a big snowfall overnight, a lot of the times you're canceling your plans because the roads are just too dangerous to drive on. Now, this is usually before the snow plows and the sanding trucks have hit the roads. But you really got to drive for the conditions here in Alberta, guys. I don't know what happens, but every single winter, it's like Canadians forget how to drive in the winter.
Say that again.
Now I have a truck that I'll throw into 4x4 and I'll be going down the highway. You know, it's crappy conditions out. I'll be going 60, 70, 80 kilometers an hour. And for some reason, people always forget what it's like to drive in the wintertime. You'll see a Prius, he'll blow by me going, 100 kilometers an hour, way too fast for the conditions, and I'll find him in the ditch a few kilometers up the road. So definitely an adjustment if you've never experienced winters before, guys. And there's a couple more things that come with the wintertime and the different seasons here. Now in Calgary, because of its proximity to the mountains, and Alberta, you can have some very wide temperature swings. People call Alberta's temperatures bipolar, but especially in Calgary, when those Chinooks blow in, which is warm weather coming off the Pacific Ocean, you can see temperatures go from -20 to the pluses in a matter of a few hours. So with these temperature changes, obviously come pressure changes, and people who struggle with headaches and migraines, you could potentially struggle even more here in Alberta. And when that snow starts to melt in the springtime, guys, if you're an allergy sufferer, you're really going to struggle in the springtime as well. So I'm allergic to snow molds and pollen and different things like that. So there's usually a period in the springtime where it's 2 to 3 weeks of runny noses, different things, congestion. So definitely going to want to keep all these things in mind, guys. The winters here in Alberta, they are rough. Now, with that being said, up until about Christmas or New Year's, it's kind of a festive season. So there's a lot of activity. People usually don't mind the winters up until that point. But once we're past Christmas and New Year's, then everybody's just ready for winter to be over. So something to keep in mind, guys, something you're definitely going to want to consider. All right, now that the bad news out of the way, guys, let's get into some of the good news. Let's take a look at the first pro. And when it comes to professional sports in Canada and Alberta, Calgary has you covered. Now, in Canada, there's basically two kind of major sports professions that everybody follows. Obviously the National Hockey League, and then there's the CFL, the Canadian Football League. I guess there's lacrosse too, but I'm not much of a lacrosse guy. I've never really watched games, so I'm not going to talk much about it. We do have one NBA team in Canada, and we have one Major League Baseball team. Both of those are in Toronto. So the majority of the sports in Canada revolve around the NHL and the CFL, and Calgary has both of those kinds of teams. Now in the CFL, Calgary has the Calgary Stampeders, and in the NHL, I guess it's a pro, Calgary has the Calgary Flames. Now, I'm a diehard Oilers fan, and you guys, you have to understand where I come from. I started watching hockey in the 80s and early 90s when the Oilers were, and still are, the greatest dynasty to ever play the game. There was Gretzky, Messier, Moog, Fuhr, and back then, the Battle of Alberta, guys, it was intense. Today is nothing compared to what it was back then. So if you were a Flames fan, you hated the Oilers. If you were an Oilers fan, you hated the Flames. So my dad is a Flames fan, so there was a big rivalry in our house. And let's face it, guys, the biggest thing the Calgary Flames were known for back then was Lanny McDonald's mustache and Tim Hunter's nose. So you can't blame me for being an Oilers fan. But nonetheless, when it comes to professional sports in Canada, Calgary has you covered. All right, guys, moving along. Next pro on the list. And this one can kind of be interpreted in a couple different ways. But in my opinion, I think Calgary is a very diverse city, the most diverse city in Alberta. Now, you're going to run into arguments with people on this, but I think if we look at diversity as sheer number of ethnicities that exist across the city, that's where I think Calgary really shines. When you're looking at possibly, is it a diverse arts and theater culture? I think maybe Edmonton really shines there. But just looking at sheer numbers, sheer amounts of different ethnicities that exist across Calgary, Calgary is definitely, in my opinion, the best in Alberta. So I know reading off some stats can be kind of boring, but I think these really illustrate Calgary's diversity. So I'm going to give you guys a few different stats. So first off, Calgary was ranked the second most diverse city in Canada. Reports say that almost 1 in 3 Calgarians were born outside of the country. There's over 240 different ethnic groups that exist across the city, and there's over 120 different languages. And in 2010, Calgary elected its first Muslim mayor and Mayor Nenshi. which I think speaks volumes about Calgary. So you look at all these different statistics, it's pretty obvious that Calgary is a very diverse city. And with this diversity and all these people coming from around the world, guys, I feel like the food scene in Calgary has definitely taken off over the last few years. There's tons of different dishes from all around the world, and it's a really good food scene. So in my opinion, when it comes to Alberta standards, when you're looking for the most diverse amount of ethnic groups, Calgary is the best. All right, guys, moving right along, let's take a look at the next pro on the list, and that is Calgary's cost of living. Now, I will start off with saying that Calgary is the most expensive market in Alberta, and a lot of people in Alberta are probably going to hop in the comments and argue with me over this. But when you look at Calgary compared to other cities of its size, the cost of living is phenomenal. And usually when you have a cost of living that's higher, that means that your city is more desirable. Lots of people are moving there. So everyone always wants to know, what does it cost to own a home in Calgary? Right now, at the time of making this video, the median detached price of a home is $472,000. Now, when you add in things like there's no land transfer tax here in Alberta, there's no provincial sales tax, you're only paying 5% GST, things really start adding up. Also in Alberta, Albertans generally pay across all income ranges lower income taxes, and Alberta has the largest personal tax exemption in the country. So you can make up to just over $19,000 before you pay any tax on your money. Also, a nice benefit of living in Calgary in Alberta is that there is no monthly fee for Alberta healthcare. It's absolutely free here. You can be covered from day one. From the time that you arrive, you just have to prove that you are a resident here and start the application process within 90 days and you'll be covered. Minimum wage in Alberta is pretty high. It's at $15 an hour. And I find that the wages in Alberta are generally just higher than most provinces. I just helped a Wicked family move here from Campbell River, British Columbia, and he's in the electrician trade. He was able to find a job within a couple of weeks, and he told me that he's making about $10 more per hour here in Alberta than he was making in British Columbia. So that is awesome. And because of our oil and gas economy here in Alberta, a lot of the times, actually pretty much all the time, Alberta has the cheapest gas prices. So when you take all this and you put it together, the cost of living here in Calgary is really, really good. Okay, moving on to the next pro, guys. This is one of the biggest reasons why people choose Calgary over other cities and places in Alberta, and that's because of its proximity to the mountains. You can be in the mountains, the Canadian Rockies, in just under an hour. So you can be in Kananaskis, Banff, Lake Louise. All these places have world-class skiing, world-class hiking. So there's tons of different day trips, weekend trips that you guys can do. I know the wife and the kids and I, we always head up to Kananaskis and we stay in the Pomeroy, which is a wicked hotel up in the mountains. And because of Calgary's proximity to the mountains, guys, you're going to have slightly, and I say slightly, milder winters here in Calgary. One of the biggest reasons is because you get to take advantage of the Chinooks. Now, we kind of talked about this before, and no, don't listen to Leonardo DiCaprio. He had no idea what he was talking about when he called it global warming. Chinooks have been a thing since forever. So these warm winds, they come off the Pacific Ocean, they come over the mountain ranges, lose their moisture, and they become really warm. So they blow into the city, and you see temperatures go from the minuses to the pluses in a few hours. So they are super cool, guys, and they do help make those winters just a little bit more bearable. And Calgary itself, guys, is a really beautiful city. So it's nestled into the foothills, so it's very scenic, very pretty. And this is also a huge reason why people move to Calgary. So a few things to keep in mind, guys, when you're trying to decide where you want to live here in Alberta. And finally, guys, the last pro on the list, and this is depending on where you're coming from as well. A lot of people reach out from Toronto and Montreal, and I know I keep talking about these cities, but that's because they're direct comparisons within Canada to Calgary. Calgary is often compared to these cities, but they really ask about the downtown scene here. Is it busy? Is there lots to do? If I was moving to Alberta, where would I live? And in my opinion, if you want that busy downtown center with lots going on, when it comes to Alberta standards, Calgary is by far the clear winner here. So Calgary's downtown, guys, you often hear people call it the Iron Jungle. As I said before, it has the second largest concentration of head offices in the country. There are tons of different restaurants, bars, and shops that you guys can go to. One of my favorites downtown is Joey's Eau Claire. If you go up to Stephen Ave, it's a really cool pedestrian mall which has limited access to vehicles. And all throughout that walkway, there's going to be tons of different restaurants, bars, theaters, shops, cool shopping places that you guys can visit. And there's also the CN Tower, which is in downtown Calgary as well, which is a neat tourist attraction. You can head up to the very top of it. It used to be the tallest building in Calgary. It's not even close anymore. But up top, you can have dinner in the restaurant up there, and it has a glass bottom. I don't like heights, so it's kind of freaky for me. But there's just a lot of different things you can do in the downtown center, guys. And there's also the Prince Island Park, guys, in the downtown core, which runs along the Bow River. So tons of awesome walking trails, bike lanes, so much activity going on down there. The last time I was down there, there was a couple I had a conversation with. They were shooting fitness videos for their YouTube channel. And another cool thing about Calgary's downtown is the +15 walkway system. So you can go 16 to 18 kilometers from building to building to building without having to go outside. So that's something that's really cool in the downtown core as well. The C train is also free downtown, guys. So in my opinion, if you're looking for somewhere that has a busier downtown center, I don't think there's anywhere in Alberta that compares to Calgary. A couple more things I want to add about Calgary, guys, is that it is the sunniest city in Canada, in North America, Canada. I can't remember. I have to fact check myself on that one. But anyways, there's lots of sun here, definitely the most in Canada for sure, averaging about 333 days of sun. You'll see this brought up in a lot of videos. But in my opinion, this definitely helps with, maybe that seasonal depression in the wintertime and stuff. It's one thing if it's cold, but at least if there's some sun out, it might make that -30 temperature a little bit better. I don't know, maybe. Calgary is also voted one of the cleanest cities. How they come up with these statistics, I don't know. But in my experience, Calgary does feel like a very clean city, especially when you're downtown, And finally, guys, I'll just leave you with that, Calgary is a very desirable place to live. When you see a lot of these best places to live in the world, Calgary actually ranked #1 in 2018 and 2019. But, it's consistently in the top 10 all the time. So phenomenal place to live, guys. I think it's a great option if you're moving to Alberta. All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you got some value from it. If you did, please hit the like button. I'd really appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button and click that notification bell. And guys, if you do need any help with your real estate needs or have any specific questions, I am a licensed realtor in Alberta. Use this information showing up on the screen right now and reach out to me any way you'd like. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.